We're still talking to husbands about husbands from First Peter chapter 3. It's really just one verse, verse 7. But there's a lot to harvest out of that verse. I've already talked about the first part where he says, husbands, in the same way, be considerate as you live with your wives. There's so much there. I don't know that any of us guys can afford to not get more information, to gather more ideas and get more data about how do I live considerately? How can I be considerate of my wife as I live with her? And then he says, and treat them with respect. We talked about that last time. The respect factor. This is one of the issues that I look at as a prime indicator of the health of couples that I counsel. Honestly, I rarely have, I'm trying to remember if I ever have, had a couple come to me and say, man, our relationship is so great. We just wanted to, come in and see how what should we do about how great our relationship is. Now, I have had a couple come in and say, we're doing pretty well, but we know we're getting ready for another season because of the age of their kids, and we want to do what we can to make ourselves ready. I love working with that couple. They're a joy. They're a pleasure. And really, what they're asking, not their words, but mine, is how do we execute on God's design for our marriage in a way that will enrich both of us and conform to God's plan? Well, here we are, guys. Number one, treat your wife with consideration. You have to be considerate. Second, treat her with respect. One of the things that respect does is it cautions us about our tone. Have you noticed that? I asked you to think a little bit about the biggest bosses, your boss's boss in your company, or what if you are the boss of the bosses? Well, then I want you to think about the chairman of your board. What I want is think of the authorities that are over you. If you were to speak with the president of the United States, what would your tone be? It would take a pretty kind of, psycho kind of person to not use a respectful tone when dealing with the president of the United States. Respect creates an atmosphere, a tone, even the tone of our voice. I often see husbands speak to their wives in a condescending tone. That's disrespectful. I think there is, there's a tendency for us to, and it's driven by pride, which I think, I'm not going to go deeply into this, but I think it runs back to fear. But our pride makes us want to try and enforce the idea that we're better. We're better than. We're better than you. We're better than them. And if we feel we aren't better, then we're in a kind of a reactive state toward anybody and maybe everybody else. Well, respect is demonstrated. It's not just an idea. It is an idea that drives behavior. And when a husband respects his wife, it will show. There are old-fashioned things that demonstrate that a husband respects his wife, like opening doors and closing doors for her, like asking her to go first, just common courtesy is a reflection of respect. Husbands, be considerate as you live with your wives and treat them with respect. One of the primary applications, in my opinion, of this passage for every Christian husband is to evaluate for yourself. First observe and then evaluate. How are you doing in terms of expressing respect for your wife? Here's how I would suggest. Ponder. For most guys, we're going to have to write this down, jot it down in a list or something. But ponder, what are the ways in the last 7 days that you have expressed respect for your wife? Just go back through your memory bank and put a flag on, cite as many times as you can when you have demonstrated your respect for your wife. I think most guys are going to be a little bit surprised by what they see looking back at them off that list. See, the idea is, now that you know that being considerate of your wives as you live with them and treating them with respect are God's design, then you've got to move that out of the category of a philosophical concept and into the biography of your life. How have you shown respect? And then a second list of how, and this is ugly, and I hope it won't be long, but it could be, how have you shown disrespect? And then the assignment after that is you want to make sure that you are eliminating disrespect and you are focusing on respect. In fact, the best way to eliminate disrespect is to focus on respect. How can you demonstrate your respect for your wife? Now, I could spend a long time giving you a big, long grocery list of things to do and ways that you can do that. I don't think that will be nearly as powerful as you listening for the Holy Spirit, who, by the way, he probably is not going to utter this in words, but he will give you these promptings, and listen for those promptings. How can you show your wife more respect? You know, there are ways, I think I can make a case for the idea that nobody in a husband's life deserves as much respect as his wife. I can also make a case that when you show respect, you will get respect. See, that's a very interesting thing that drives the relationships I know anything about. Men long for respect from their wives. Of the many things that we want from our wives, we want respect. Paul, in Ephesians chapter 5, kind of summarizes his teaching on husbands and wives by saying that wives should love their husbands should love their wives, and wives should respect their husbands. A guy named Egridges wrote a book called Love and Respect. When a man receives respect from his wife and a wife receives love from her husband, we get what our receptors are looking for. Interesting to me that Peter writes here that husbands, we're supposed to offer to our wives the thing we most want. Respect. Well, okay, there's a lot more to that, but I've said all that. I mean, I'm pretty much trying to get blood from a turnip at this point. But anyway, Peter writes, treat them with respect as the weaker partner. Well, I brushed against that last time by saying, yeah, you physiologically, even a strong woman generally is physically less strong than a strong man. And in Peter's day, there were no woman bodybuilders, okay? There was no women mixed martial arts fighters. Women were expected, their role in society was to be differential. Okay, they were expected to defer to the husband and to acquiesce. Well, I think what Peter's talking about here is not that they are emotionally weaker, intellectually weaker, spiritually weaker. I don't think those are that is not the weakness that Peter's talking about. Honestly, in my marriage, my wife is smarter, she's deeper spiritually, she is emotionally probably stronger. She's certainly more consistent emotionally than I am. She is physically not as strong as I am. And at my age, this stage of my life, I'm probably less strong now than I've been since I was in my pre-adolescence. Still, though, there is that mark. Now, that's just a practical kind of application of this. But think about this. When you have a partnership, the weaker partner in that partnership basically establishes the pace for that forward movement of that relationship. Okay, I want you to think about, an ancient kind of illustration. You put two oxen in a yoke to pull a cart or a plow. The stronger of the two mustn't lead, or else the things are going to go in a circle, right? It's the weaker that sets the pace, and the stronger, in a good pairing, the stronger paces itself toward the pace of the weaker. Now, there's another aspect of this. That delicate might be another synonym for the idea of weaker. We don't have very many fine art things in our house. We're just not fine arts people so much. I have one antiquity. Debbie and I purchased when God made it possible for us to make what may be our one and only visit to the Holy Land, to Jerusalem. In an antiquities shop, we bought a little terracotta. It's no bigger than this. A little terracotta lamp that actually would have been the kind of lamp when Jesus told the parable of the 10 virgins. 5 were wise and 5 were unwise, and they had lamps waiting for the coming of the bridegroom. These are probably the kind of lamps that those maidens would have had. And the archaeologist who found them, using archaeological data and dating techniques, dates our lamp at 30 BC to 30 AD. That, to me, is an ancient treasure. And we have it in a place where it's displayed prominently and carefully and securely. We treat it with special care because of its value. But it is, it's lasted for 2,000 years. So it's not that it's totally fragile, but because of how valuable it is to us, we treat it with special care. Isn't that really what Peter is saying? Treat your wife with respect as the weaker partner. Okay, we focused on weaker. Now let's focus on partner. When you have a partner, an ideal partnership doesn't put a less value on one partner and a higher value on another. I mean, we're talking about an equal partnership. I think that's what Peter has in mind. It's not like you've got a lead partner who is more important, more intelligent, more experienced, more fill in the blank. We're talking about an equal partner. That has to be set up against the design of the husband as the head of the marriage, as Christ is the head of the church, according to the Apostle Paul, again in Ephesians chapter 5. And Peter, in the preceding paragraph, has talked about women being submissive to their husbands. But this is not about one being more valuable than the other. This is about people with equal value. In a partnership of equal value, both bring asset and value to the relationship, to the partnership. Treat her, because of this, with respect. And that's not the only reason. We're going to talk about the other reason, which may be, if we need a hierarchy of reasons, it's a bigger reason. But we'll talk about that next time on Soul Care with Stevie Boy.